Welcome to the Navigating the NRCS and Online Resources webinar. I am Keegan Colt, the Executive Director of the Agricultural Drainage Management Coalition. This webinar is the 5th webinar in the series of 6 webinars that is produced in partnership with ADMC with the Conservation Technology Information Center. CTIC received a grant from EPA to conduct a series of ag consultant training aimed at equipping consultants with tools and resources and knowledge to speed up the implementation of conservation drainage practices. What you will learn today is how to find NRCS conservation practice standards on their website, how to find the payment rates, evaluate payment scenarios, find a technical service provider, as well as looking at some of the transforming drainage tools. ADMC is a member-supported coalition. Our members include the tile manufacturers and distributors, the engineering groups that design a lot of these conservation drainage practices, others in the ag industry, as well as the Land Improvement Contractors Association and contractors themselves. ADMC's mission, we are a partnership of industry leaders aimed at improving America's water quality and agronomics through managing our drainage systems. We really look to find practical solutions. Once we have practical solutions available, practices that will work for both production and the environment, we look at ways to speed the implementation of those practices. Reviewing from our previous webinars, in case you hadn't watched all 6, but we're only selecting a few to watch, the benefits of tile drainage. A lot of us know what these are, but one of the main reasons people install tile is to ensure that earlier planting date and have those solid planting conditions available in the spring to make sure there's not too much moisture there, extend those windows of that growing season. Tile drainage also sets up to have better harvest conditions by removing that excessive moisture, prevents moving heavy equipment through the fields when the soil conditions are too wet to handle that, prevents compaction, which leads to issues in the future crops. Tile drainage is also utilized heavily as a risk mitigation tool, decreases crop damage caused by excessive moisture and precipitation, which is one of the leading insurance claims for crop insurance throughout the United States. Tile drainage also is found to improve nitrogen use efficiency, so you can produce more grain with less nitrogen. You can lower your inputs. The production of artificial nitrogen is one of the most energy-intensive components of agriculture in the United States. So by utilizing drainage and decreasing the amount of fertilizer that you're then using to produce your crop, it's a way to effectively decrease the energy needed for production. All this leads to improved profitability, which leads to increased land values. Of course, with the benefits of tile drainage, there's also unintended consequences. Leaky nutrients cause resource concerns. Any nutrient that's dissolvable, transported by water, can get into our tile systems, which ultimately end up in our surface water bodies. This happens at every level, so the farm level, private wells, livestock, local level. The source waters for our communities and larger communities often come from surface water bodies or shallow wells that can be contaminated with nitrates, have impact on recreation and tourism. Then also the regional concerns like the hypoxic zones, harmful algal blooms, the TMDL, for the Chesapeake Bay, Western Lake Erie Basin, and the Gulf of Mexico. So I'm going to try to take you through a few of the NRCS's website, and they just recently updated the website earlier this fall. So hopefully this is new to me too, but hopefully I can help walk you through this. Here's QR codes if you wanted to scan it to go to the NRCS homepage or straight to their field office technical guide. That's what it'll look like on their homepage. Now I'm going to switch from my PowerPoint and get to that website. So I'm going to reshare my screen here. All right. So here is the NRCS website on the new home screen of what it looks like. If you want to get to that field office technical guide, go ahead and click on the resources tab. The field office technical guide has most up-to-date information on conservation practice standards that are currently being used, as well as the payment rate information. Here's the new field office technical guide screen. It describes what's in each section of the field office technical guide. Generally, section 4 has the most information that I go to, and that's take a look at the conservation practice standards and their supporting documents. I'll go ahead and find your state's technical guide. I'll pick Minnesota today. Once again, a brief summary of what's in each section. It's important to kind of know what you want to look for and maybe find that in advance. All right. So in the Minnesota here, go to section 4, practice standards. There's a lot of great information in here. A conservation practice standard listed out. I'll find one for drainage water management. So we talked about that earlier in this webinar series. But you can see there's a whole list of documents that becomes available. Here's what it looks like for drainage water management. I will point to always try to find the date available on these conservation practice standards. I think it's a little bit dangerous sometimes to just use a search engine, use Google, and search for drainage water management 554 CPS, because you might stumble upon an older, outdated conservation practice standard. So I do like going through the NRCS website to find anything NRCS related, and that's both the conservation practice standards and the payment rates, because you run the risk of finding older documentation. I'll also notice that it says NRCS Minnesota. Sometimes you could also, if you just use a search engine to find this, you will unknowingly get the conservation practice standard or a payment scenario for a different state that you didn't recognize that you were doing. So it is important to go through the actual NRCS website. All right, I'll jump back to my PowerPoint now. 1 second. All right, back on my PowerPoint. Bear with me as I navigate using Zoom on multiple screens here and jumping back and forth between PowerPoint and being online. Just a screenshot of the field office technical guide. But getting back to the NRCS and utilizing NRCS to find financial assistance information on the new web page. I think the easiest way to do this when I was looking earlier is to go to that resources tab on NRCS's webpage. And so let me see if I can't get back there. So hopefully you're seeing my screen here that's on the field office technical guide. Navigate back to NRCS's homepage. All right, financial assistance information. Actually, I was mistaken. Getting assistance is where you can go to financial help, go to payment schedules, look at the rates by state. Jumping into Iowa. Here's the long list, and these are big documents. Talk about all the different payment rates and different scenarios that are available. We'll jump down to some of the practices we work with. So the new CAP used to be CAP 130, now is drainage or design implementation activity 164 to actually design drainage water management systems. You can see here they got about 7 different scenarios listed out and the different payment rates associated with that. On this is for any practice. And I advise kind of downloading this once a year for every state that you're looking to do work in, and then you can use searchable PDF to jump straight to your practice that you're thinking about looking at. Also, once again, point out, make sure you're up to date and using the right year. So it is dangerous to go ahead and trust whatever you search for, that it's the right one. So make sure you take a look and find this information. Also, I want to point out how they build out those different payment rates on the practice scenarios. This is an even bigger document, but it does set you up on how they come up with these different scenarios. One word of caution, if you're looking at the scenarios, practice scenarios, the dollar total is the scenario total unit cost. That is not the amount of financial assistance that will be available. That financial assistance amount will be a percentage of that, either 50%, 75%, 90%, whatever that particular state chooses to fund. That's where that number will come into play. So if you download the different scenarios, just be sure to know, like, that's what the estimated full cost of that scenario is. That's not the payment rate. All right, so bouncing through that again. And lastly, I just wanted to get to some of the online tools that are available. The website, I think, really wraps it up the most when it comes to drainage is this transformingdrainage.org. This was a project that brought in a lot of the research universities that do a lot of the work with conservation drainage practices, and they really did a phenomenal job building out this website to make this information available to everybody. It's free, and so we'll jump to that website real quick and walk through that. So this is just the transformingdrainage.org homepage. You can see what they have, talk about the project team. I'll give you guys a shout out. You can see it was a very big team. It is a huge undertaking, but they did a phenomenal job of really putting out a lot of great products. The practices that they go into great detail with are controlled drainage, saturated buffers, and drainage water recycling. You notice like practices like the bioreactors weren't on here. They were really trying to focus on practices that impact not only water quality, but start thinking about water quantity as well. And that's how they picked out the practices. Controlled drainage, we'll just go in here. You can view my webinar, controlled drainage, to get more details on it. But it has, the nice Q&A documents. I'll go down here. Oh, there's a conservation practice standards. Once again, this is probably going to be dated though on this website. But they do have links to the field office technical guide here for you to get there. The webinars, this is a really nice feature. You get a lot of great information kind of by the leaders in this field on these. So each one of these practices will have a similar setup here where you have the webinars, decisions, and tools. This is my favorite feature of the website, is utilizing this. But quick, I'll show you just if you want to get more information than you could ever need to use probably, unless you're going on a deep dive on this. But here's all the publications that were a result of this transforming drainage project. So you can see just a huge list, and it's like this for all three of the practices. Jumping to the tools, a lot of great tools. The drain spacing tool that Hassan Gagne out of Michigan State University has is a really nice feature. It helps you think about your design. It's based off of target planting needs, what kind of spacing you're going to need, how that impacts everything. Then jumping down to the controlled drainage suitability tool. This is really nice if you're working with a customer. It tells you how they made the assumptions on here, so that flat topography, 1% or less slope, soils that have that seasonal high water table, cropland use, so make sure it's actually in cropland. And they also took that next step of wanting 15 acres or more that represent these three prior criteria. That way it's more economically feasible to it, so you don't just have a lot of small little segments. But jumping down, you can take a look at the map, zoom in, wherever you might have a client, or if you're a farmer yourself, you can zoom over your fields and see, what the likelihood is that you have drainage water management that would work for you. Always kind of have to turn off the layer so you can zoom into where you want to go. I like to do the hybrid imagery, so it has the street names there, so you can find where you're going. Once you kind of get zoomed in over your field, turn back. You have to make sure you're zoomed out far enough so you can turn it back on. And if it's red, that means it's a likelihood that it will work. Of course, there's even the caveat that this is kind of more to give you a general idea. You still need to do your field visits, site investigations, to see if controlled drainage is going to work. But it's a really powerful and effective tool and a great way to get that conversation started. It's something that's really easy for people to understand. So you can just send them a link to your farmer if you have a client that might be interested in this, and they could check out all their fields on it as well. They do the same with sub irrigation. It's a little bit more specific than 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 the control drainage tool. There's a few more site criteria that need to be met, but very similar. You can zoom in on your field, see if there's a potential or not. See where so the suitability here, low potential, medium potential, and high potential. So yeah, you can do that. It's all the same. With that, that was our kind of quick and brief introduction into navigating NRCS's website and where to find those conservation practice standards, as well as the payment scenarios, and then taking a look at the transforming drainage tools that are available. Feel free to go ahead and pull out your phone and scan that QR code, and you can take a quick quiz, about a 5-6 minute quiz on navigating the NRCS and its online tools. Always recommend going to the field office technical guide for the most up-to-date information. Never really trust anything that you Google unless you can see the date and know it's the most up-to-date document from the NRCS. Kind of wish all those old ones would get scrubbed from the internet, but they don't, of course. Section 4 of the field office technical guide is the one that contains those conservation practice scenarios that describe what the NRCS wants to see. Section 1 will have that payment information for you. And then transforming drainage, if you ever have questions about some of these conservation drainage practices, especially saturated buffers, controlled drainage, or drainage water recycling, transforming drainage, it's probably the best resource out there. It also has links to tools for designing new drainage systems if you're interested in looking at that and playing around with that. With that, I'd love if you want to interact further with ADMC, feel free to reach out to me via email. I have my email address there. Follow us on Twitter. We try to be active on Twitter. Of course, you can always become a member of ADMC and support the coalition. We do have a new affiliate level membership at $125. That would be great if people would want to join and sign up through that. Otherwise, just visit our website. First time you visit the website, there will be a pop-up. Pop-up only happens once a year, so don't worry, you can keep coming back to the website in the future and not be annoyed by it. But it'll ask you to sign up for a Conservation Drainage Weekly e-newsletter. That newsletter is a great resource for learning about these practices. I generally try to get the latest research publications included in that Conservation Drainage Weekly, and then any articles in the news featuring farmers that have chose to implement these practices. You can find some case studies there, and then also implementation funding opportunities. So anything like various RCPP projects that are out there, other NRCS type programs, pilot projects that are getting announced, opportunities for people that sign up. I have that included. And then finally, we try to link any of the webinars about these practices that I like to talk about, as well as events like field days and drainage schools. And so it's really a great way to stay informed. And if you want to find more information, it's a quick, easy way for you to do that. I'd just like to thank you for completing this webinar today. Thank you to CTIC for partnering with ADMC to do this, and also complete the acronym soup here, but thank you to EPA providing that contract to CTIC on this ag consultant training. We do hope these are valuable resources that will get utilized in the future.